There's going to be a battle here tomorrow. All you've got to do is stand and fire 3 rounds a minute. Now, you and I know you can fire 3 rounds a minute. But can you stand?
Can you stand? That is the question Sharp asks his soldiers. He knows that they have the technical ability to fire 3 rounds per minute, which in the Napoleonic Wars was sufficient. But did they have the courage in the noise and the smoke and the chaos and fear of battle to stand? That is what will be decisive. And this question faces us now as Francis and those around him launch an all-out assault against the traditional liturgy. So where are we going to find the strength and the grace to stand? St. Thomas Aquinas, analysing the virtue of fortitude, refers us to Aristotle, who says that certain persons are said to be brave chiefly because they endure affliction. And so Thomas agrees that the principal act of fortitude is endurance, that is to stand immovable in the midst of dangers rather than to attack them. He gives 3 reasons why endurance is more difficult than aggression. First, because aggression implies at least that you are the stronger party, but endurance must be maintained even when you think you're weaker. Secondly, one who is enduring is undergoing a present danger, whereas one who attacks sees the danger in the future. And third, because endurance by its nature implies a length of time, whereas aggression is consistent with sudden movements. The very best example we have of this endurance is our Lord Jesus Christ in his passion, and similar to him in her soul is Mary, the Mother of God. Don Prosper Granger writes in his liturgical year, "What is her attitude at the foot of his cross? Does her matchless grief overpower her? Does she swoon or fall? No, the evangelist says there stood by the cross of Jesus his mother. The sacrificing priest stands when offering at the altar. Mary stood for such a sacrifice as hers was to be." He then quotes St. Ambrose, who he notes has a special insight into Mary's character. "She stood opposite the cross, gazing with maternal love on the wounds of her son. She wasn't there simply waiting for her son to die, but for the world to be saved." This is crucial for our endurance. We have to have faith in the Lord, hope in his resurrection and ours, confidence in the triumph of Our Lady's Immaculate Heart. I'm sure there was a pope who said that there couldn't be paintings depicting Mary sitting or swooning and fainting under the cross because she stood there, she was strong. I asked ChatGPT about this, and the artificial intelligence confidently answered that the Pope who insisted Mary be depicted standing on the cross, as in the Stabat Mater, was Pope Benedict XIV in his encyclical Ubi Primum. Now, this is false, but it's interesting. The AI says that Mary stood next to the cross of her son, not as one overcome by grief, but rather as a true martyr who, in the supernatural order, had offered her own son to the divine justice, dying with him in her heart. Now, that's beautiful. It sounds like St. Alphonsus or St. Bernard, but it's absolutely not from this encyclical Ubi Primum. This is about the duties of bishops, not about the Stabat Mater. Despite their factual error sourcing this idea or this quote, the AI says that the image of Mary standing under the cross as a strong and faithful witness to her son's suffering has become a powerful symbol of maternal love and devotion for many Catholics. So I thought I'd give a follow-up question to ChatGPT and very nicely apologized for any confusion. Upon further research, I found the statement about Pope Benedict XIV insisting on Mary being depicted standing under the cross may not be entirely accurate. But he goes on to say in that encyclical, he encouraged the veneration of the Stabat Mater and other devotions to the sorrow of Mary. Now, in fact, I don't think Benedict XIV did do that in this encyclical, but again, a lovely quote, "Nothing can be more holy, more salutary, or more consoling than the meditations of the mysteries of the Passion of Christ and his mother." The AI apologizes again for any confusion or misinformation, its previous response. So there's a very interesting mix of profound truths, which look like they're being quoted from the saints, and the kind of garbage you can expect from a machine that has no real intelligence or sentience. And I should apologize for going to AI to ask such a question. If anybody knows which pope it was that said that in sacred art Our Lady should be depicted standing, Stabat Mater, not lying on the ground, or not as Mary Magdalene, kind of overcome by grief at the cross, then please let me know in the comments. We can gain a great lesson in raw fortitude from Bravo 20, an 8-man special forces unit who found themselves behind enemy lines in 1991 during the Iraq War. When they were trying to make their way to safety, they encountered a force of Iraqis, outnumbering them, could have been a couple of hundred, who had armored vehicles, tanks, and the 8 SAS had only what they were carrying. Now, you might think the best thing to do in this situation is to try to run away, but they had a better training than that. Instead, they spread into a wide line after assessing the situation and moved forward.
Training takes over. You sight yourself up, check out your pouches are closed, your pockets are up, and your magazines are untied.
They went on to the offensive. Now, this completely surprises the enemy, who was not expecting that at all. But the thinking of the special forces was, if they go down or try to hold a line, they have no chance. If they run away, they're going to get shot in the back. The only option they had was to move forward. We should think about this now that Francis and those around him are so shamelessly attacking the greatest goods of Catholic worship. When you're a tiny force and you're greatly outnumbered, sometimes you just have to walk into the fire. Another practice of good armies is that they don't just fight for a particular target, but they will fight through the position. That means you go beyond what you need, because if you drive the enemy off a certain position, they might be waiting behind it to launch a counterattack. So it's not, in fact, enough for traditional priests or Catholics to think, well, we have the Mass where we are, that's okay. Or when Francis issued a decree saying he grants faculties to the FSSP to say the Old Mass, both these are an insupportable confinement. I mean, there must be the right for any priest anywhere to offer the Old Mass, or you will find that those few who exercise that right will lose it if it's not recognized that every priest has this right. And as for faculties, I don't understand how in this brief from Francis, I think in February 2022, he says he grants faculties to priests to say the traditional Mass. No priest has ever needed faculties to offer the Mass. You need them for confessions or delegation, for confirmations or for marriages, but you don't need faculties to offer the Mass. That's what you're ordained for. That can't be given or taken away. That's why you're a priest. If perhaps you are laicized because you're an abuser, that's a different matter. But the idea of granting faculties to say the Old Mass is, as far as I can tell, and I've asked canonists about this, it's just a pure spontaneous invention. It has no reference in canon law. If I'm wrong, please tell me. But this is the chaos of the legal situation in the church now. So to meekly accept that idea that, oh, we have faculties, we can carry on, is not a safe position long term. It might be a tactical pause for a breather. One can understand why, having received that decree, the fraternity aren't arguing with it. We can't pretend that's satisfactory for the long term. The church is definitely undergoing a passion, but this is not going to end in death. Jesus' time on earth did not end in death. He went through death. He lay in the tomb and he resurrected. That's the whole point. And he taught his disciples and was with them before he ascended gloriously into heaven. The same thing will play out in the history of the world. The church is going through her passion. There has been the betrayal of Judas, the bishops. The church, stripped of her beauty, seems to lie dead in the tomb. But she will resurrect, and it will be glorious. And the triumph will happen inside of history, just before our Lord comes again. Now, am I trying to learn ecclesial lessons from Sean Bean, from Sharp, and from Bravo 20? Not exactly. Francis is not our enemy, and we shouldn't be launching an aggressive assault toward Francis. It's who is behind him that is the real enemy. Who is behind Traditionis Custodes and the lockdowns that afflicted the church in 2020, 2021. I think it is a Jewish mentality that sees us victim everywhere to legal positivism or the Jewish legalism. and also the inchoate one world order from a false messianism of people who await